By 2008, you were the biggest airline in the country,
And this
having
is
a 27% market share,
yes.
right? What went wrong? If things were right, your marketing was working, you had everything right. In fact, before even you answer that, I want to go to which is often talked about is your training of cabin crew. What was the idea behind that? You selected certain people based on how they look or how they're going to be presented.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, you have very good-looking ladies who sadly can't speak very well. Now, what is one of the key attributes of a cabin crew? Communication. I mean, you may look good, but if you can't communicate with the passenger, that doesn't serve the purpose. The kind of service standards that I set for the airline. And my service standards were unique. They included, in business class, the air hostesses cleaning the reading glasses and spectacles of our customers. We call them guests, right? So there were little things that made a vast difference in the customer experience.
Tell me three more things.
This is one.
Okay.
Secondly, the food was second to none, right? I mean, the quality of the seats themselves, the recline and all the rest of it, what they call the seat pitch, just second to none. So there were so many little attributes. We called customers not passengers but guests. Many airlines have copied us since. But there were the little things that made a difference. I was very focused on the service delivery excellence of Kingfisher. You can go further because you don't know this, you can't ask me the question.
Yeah.
So let me tell you.
Yeah.
In the first 1 year, the airport manager at every single airport in India had to send me on my personal mobile and SMS with the flight number, the scheduled time of departure, and the actual departure time. So every night before I went to bed, which was rather late, I used to look at my phone, every single flight of Kingfisher of that day. I used to monitor personally the on-time performance.
You were so detailed focused. You were so
Because the service industry and the airline industry requires focus, requires detailed focus.
agreed. Then it worked in your favor till 2008. What happened then?
Simple. You've ever heard of Lehman Brothers?
Yeah.
You ever heard of the global financial crisis? Right? Did it not impact India?
Of course it did. The whole aviation sector was.
Forget aviation. Every sector.
Every sector was, yeah.
You
The
saw
money
what
stopped,
did
it got dry.
to the value of the Indian rupee. So I went to Shri Pranab Mukherjee, then Finance Minister of India. Having grown up in Calcutta, I speak fairly decent Bengali. And I said, Pranab da, আমার প্রবলেম আছে কিংফিশার এয়ারলাইন্সকে ডাউনসাইজ করতে হবে, which means I have to downsize this airline. I have to cut the number of aircraft. I have to lay off employees, right? Because I can't afford to operate under these depressed economic circumstances. He said, no. At this time, connectivity is important.
Yeah.
The jobs and employment are important, particularly because, typically in an airline, they're not blue-collar workers. These are not like workmen.
Yeah.
The boys and girls who work in an airline can't be classified as blue-collar. And he said, I don't want them to lose their jobs. So you continue, banks will support you. That is how it all started. I was told not to downsize Kingfisher at that time. And yes, the banks did support. All right. Now,
what happened then?
Well, you tell me the narrative. I'll tell you the truth. You tell me the narrative.
Then there was a consortium formed of 17 banks, and the loan was given to you via SBI, right? Was that the first, or IDBI was first?
See, this is where people are not aware.
Hmm.
I acquired Air Deccan,
Hmm.
which everybody says was a big mistake.
Yeah.
Right?
In $137 million or something like that. Everybody says you overpaid for it.
In the world of business, there's something known as consolidation, industry consolidation. There is something known as eliminate the disruptor.
Okay.
Air Deccan was famous for advertising and promoting 1 rupee tickets.
Yeah.
Clearly, you could never ever sustain any airline business selling tickets for 1 rupee. Right? Okay, it was a bait.
Hmm.
But that set certain price expectations in the mindset of the customers.
Yeah.
And affected not only Deccan, which was losing money, but the industry as a whole, of which Kingfisher was also a part. Right? So, at that time, we looked at it. Air Deccan was also Bangalore based. It had the same Airbus aircraft. It had the same trained pilots as Kingfisher. So there was a lot of engineering compatibility.
Hmm.
Plus scale and size with the merger of Kingfisher and Deccan. Eliminate the disruptor and consolidate the industry and Kingfisher Airlines. That was the logic of buying Deccan. Not this much touted logic of I was desperate to fly overseas. I needed to get past that 5-year hurdle.
Yeah.
Complete nonsense. Now, why should I shout from the rooftops trying to clarify this? But if you talk to anybody about elimination of a disruptor and consolidation of industry, it'll start making, and commonality of equipment, it'll start making business sense.
But if your philosophy was to make a premium airline, why would you buy something which stands for low cost carrier, which stands for something cheap, which stands for 1 rupee ticket? Because the customers would be completely different. The only obvious sense which anybody could make it out from it was, if you are going for a different vision, you are probably going out because the 5-year window which you wanted to bounce, right?
Probably, of course.
Like that was the logic. Like, to clarify, to tell people who don't know about it, the logic that people talk about is, if an Indian airline wanted to fly overseas, they should have operated in India for at least 5 years before getting the license to operate air.
Yes. Correct.
And you didn't have that.
Yes.
And that's why you bought Air Deccan, so that you could start flying overseas. And you paid an absurd amount of price for it. That's what people say.
So who are the people that you're quoting?
Everybody, like all the things that I've read, all the media.
Like media, right?
Yeah, like the
legacy media, right?
The legacy media,
Yeah.
the people who are responsible for giving us the information. I mean, that's what, as a citizen, that's where I get my information from.
Correct.
And at least from the ones who I really respect.
I don't think anybody at UB Group was that dumb, with a lack of business understanding, to buy an airline, an operating airline, just to be able to fly overseas. I'm telling you, the logic was consolidation of the industry, given the commonality of equipment. I referred a little earlier to the installation of a front cabin of business class, which we called Kingfisher First, which Indigo are doing even now. There are certain routes in India that demand, right, a front cabin, where there are people who will only fly business class.
Fair.
But the bulk of India, people want a single class product. Deccan fitted that bill fantastically, right? We opened up more routes than had ever been opened before or available for air connectivity. That was one of the biggest contributions we made to the Indian aviation sector and economy, right? Deccan also played a part in that. So, Kingfisher's sad failure subsequently had nothing to do with Deccan.
Okay.
Nothing to do with how much we paid for Deccan. Right?
Got it.
Those were totally separate set of reasons. Right?
But
Business reasons.
Here's the question on it. So I get the idea that you wanted to service more routes. You wanted to consolidate. That was a business decision. You saw that, hey, I want to build a premium airline, but there's a bulk of India who cares about the price. And you wanted to contribute to make sure that I want to make sure that India gets to fly anywhere and everywhere through the price point which Air Deccan provides. And if I could be the one to consolidate it and I could be the one to actually eliminate the disruptor, I should do it. Business decision. Brilliant. Do you think then the wrong decision was to rebrand it to Kingfisher Red?
No, because you can't start operating one Deccan and one Kingfisher. So we just called it Kingfisher Red. I mean, rebranding is common in the world. Take Coca-Cola, right? There's Coke, there's Coke Zero, there's Diet Coke. There's all Coke, right? So a multi-brand strategy is no rocket science.
Yeah. But then the philosophy of Air Deccan was low cost. And in Kingfisher Red, so Kingfisher stood for premium, Kingfisher Red stood for low cost.
It was differentiated Kingfisher first and Kingfisher Red.
Okay.
Right? You tell me something. What's the difference between Coke Zero and Diet Coke? Tell me.
Just two names, I don't know.
Yeah, fine. What's the philosophy behind it? You don't know. So how can all these commentators be commenting on Kingfisher first and Kingfisher Red? You know, the trouble in India is that there are too many commentators who don't understand the facts. And of course, the media plays to the gallery. And that's how disinformation gets spread wide.
And then you stated somewhere, again, the commentators I'm quoting, that I want to, if I've put in a name Kingfisher on an airline, no matter even if it's low cost, I want to provide all the services. You started providing all the services, you started providing catering, you started providing everything in a low cost carrier, didn't you?
I began by saying that Kingfisher started off with all the attributes of a low cost carrier, which is single class, standard fleet, etc., etc., etc. But I said the only differentiator was in-flight entertainment and food.
But
I mean, just because I gave food didn't make it a full service carrier. I mean, you want, shall I give you examples?
Yeah.
You go on any low cost carrier here in Europe, all right? Do they starve you or do they feed you?
But you have to pay for it.
No, all of them?
I don't know, few of them, the ones I've flown.
Okay. So there are exceptions.
Okay. But that was the business, like that's what everybody talks about, right?
You know, that's the problem. Lack of information and knowledge, and more importantly, no domain knowledge of the aviation industry leads to all sorts of speculation that makes no sense.
So you tell us that does it make business sense to provide food and in-flight entertainment in a low-cost carrier where people don't care about it?
Wait. Our belief was Indians love food and love entertainment.
That was for Kingfisher first, but not for Kingfisher Red. Kingfisher Red stands for
Why?
low-cost carrier.
An in-flight entertainment system doesn't cost you money to operate every day.
But still costs you a lot of money, which eventually will bleed your balance sheet.
Really?
I'm asking you.
Well, not in our opinion.
Do you think that was the wrong decision?
What?
Just
To acquire
providing...
Deccan?
After acquiring Deccan, giving all the services of a full service carrier in a low cost carrier?
The full service carrier part of it was very distinct from the so-called low cost carrier. Uh, at the end of the day, however you may refer to these business models,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about the price your customers are willing to pay and whether you can fill your planes. Simple.
So your
All models are academic and theoretical that really are irrelevant.
but your critiques say that you were competing against other low cost carriers.
Like,
Like at that time, was it? I think Indigo started at that time,
oh, okay,
and
that's it.
Spice started at that time.
No.
I think Spice.
Spice was there on and off,
Yeah.
but okay,
Okay, so-
more off than
So
on.
you were competing with low cost carriers with their pricing, but you were providing something extra, and that's why your business model was bleeding more money than them. And you expected that this will turn into loyal customers, but the moment you increase price, people would not fly your flights. Was it?
That's
Was it true?
That's what the critics say. They are all aviation experts. I have nothing to say.
So where was the problem? Then if this was not the problem, then
Well,
what happened?
The problem was the government. The problem was fairly and squarely the government. And they've made a lot of political hay out of this. When I used to write to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, when I used to write to the civil aviation ministers, ministers of finance, the cost of crude, international crude, went to $140 a barrel. The price of aviation turbine fuel in India was directly related to the cost of international crude oil. So you can see that from an average of about $60 a barrel, crude oil went to $140 a barrel, with the resultant and equivalent increase in the price of aviation turbine fuel. The state governments levied an ad valorem sales tax on aviation turbine fuel. So you can yourself now begin to imagine the financial impact on the airline operating, where fuel costs are the single largest component of cost. So I pleaded, I said, look, please give aviation turbine fuel declared good status so that it attracts central sales tax and not this punitive ad valorem state sales tax, right? Because the states are making windfall profits. Anyway, that the government did not do.
Okay.
Aviation is regarded as a capital intensive industry, right? It's acknowledged as such worldwide. Right? They would not permit foreign investment. It was said that only 6 months after Kingfisher Airlines shut, right, that they permitted Etihad to invest in jet. I had already reached agreement with the CEO of Etihad in Geneva for them to invest in Kingfisher, which government did not permit. So we could not capitalize the airline through a foreign investor either.
Why didn't they allow?
You should ask the government, right? So my point is, the economy, the circumstances, the government policy then existing, all conspired to create a perfect storm through which Kingfisher could not survive. I mean, that's the sad part of it. If you talk about Kingfisher, the concept, and UB Group's diversification into aviation, I'll answer it in one sentence. The two biggest orders for aircraft in the world today are Air India and Indigo, both Indian carriers. The fastest growing aviation market in the world today is India. Now, if you yourself acknowledge that in 2008, Kingfisher was the largest airline with a 27% market share, had events not conspired against us, right? You can imagine where Kingfisher could potentially have been today.
Hmm.
But sadly, not all businesses work out. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
थैंक यू सो मच ये क्लिप एंड तक देखने के लिए. अगर आपको और भी ऐसी क्लिप्स देखनी है तो राज शमानी क्लिप्स चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर लीजिए.